Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're going to talk about the choice that we all have to make changes in our lives and facing our fears. Our guest is Michele Tyburski, creator of Hiking After 50, a social media brand that reminds us that it's never too late to become active and enjoy the outdoors. Michele is a high school science teacher from northeastern Pennsylvania, and after a series of life events, she decided that enough is enough and found hiking as a release and a trigger for transformation. And which I'm very excited about, includes getting over her fear of heights. And I'm super excited about that because I know this is something so many people struggle with. And when we step into adventure, it's almost always that we have to face down our fears. And Michele has done that beautifully. She's here to share her story with us. And I am so excited for this conversation. Michele, welcome to the campfire.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited for this. We'll get into the fear of heights as part of this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to that because it is something that I think a lot of people face. But before we get there, let's talk about hiking after 50. Can you give us a little overview of what this is, what your brand is, and how it got started?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the name is somewhat self-explanatory, but the posts and the information that I put out there to the world is not just for people over the age of 50. It's for anybody who wants to start hiking and just enjoying nature. It's a lot of fun to do this. I have a blast actually putting the social media aspect of it together.
Yes. What was the inspiration behind actually putting this social media brand together, Hiking After 50?
Well, when first started posting information, I was just posting it on my personal Facebook page.
Mhm.
And I would post about my hikes and about my adventures. And my friends, numerous friends, said, you should do something with this. You should make this into something more. And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Let's do it. So here we are.
I love it. So you said it's for everybody, but obviously the title is Hiking After 50. So that was kind of like the primary sort of focus at first. I'm curious about that. Could you kind of speak about where that came from, the Hiking After 50 piece?
Sure. Well, I didn't start hiking formally until I was about 47 years old.
Nice.
So, I got a lot of hiking under my belt, and then I wanted to do more challenging hikes
Yeah.
and trails, which is where that progressed to. So when I decided to brand this, I was already over the age of 50. So I thought, you know what? Let's go with it, hiking after 50, because from here on out, that's what it's going to be. So
Yeah, I love it. So just for listeners, what are some of the things that people can expect to find on your social media page? What are the kinds of things that you're posting about?
I post everything from funny memes about hiking and funny videos about hiking to actually being on the trail with me, just some really, really beautiful scenery. I've been contacted by many people who, can't do some of the things that I'm doing. And I'm aware that many people have some physical limitations and aren't able to do as much as they might like to do. So I try to provide some pictures and some inspiration for them and teach them how they can find certain things. There are roadside waterfalls and different lakes and streams in various places that even people with mobility issues can get to. So I try to find them for people and show them. And I want them to be able to experience nature, even if their body is, a little tired and maybe not willing to hit the trail.
Yeah, so I think that's so cool, and we'll get into the background and how this all came about. But what a cool thing that you are just basically doing something that you've discovered that you love, and you start posting, and now there's people that have physical limitations that are literally reaching out to you and letting you know how what you're doing is inspiring them. What's that like? And is that unexpected? Can you talk about that?
When I first went onto social media, I went in with zero expectations. I
Mhm.
had no idea what to expect. I thought, who's going to want to watch this old lady hiking? So I was a little surprised when people started to reach out, and some of the videos that I make actually address their questions. If there's something I feel that the community as a whole could benefit from, I take their questions and we answer them publicly.
Yeah, so do you remember, like, one of the first few reach outs that you received, messages that you got from people, like, were you surprised by it?
It definitely made me laugh, and it used wording that I will not repeat here.
Okay.
A lovely woman alluded to the fact that her knees would just not allow her to do the things that I'm out there doing.
Yeah.
And that started the whole series on roadside waterfalls.
Oh, wow, I love it. So you got some messaging about limitations, and you took that and said, "Well, let's talk about how maybe we can look at this a different way."
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm really fortunate living in the Northeast. There are many, many waterfalls and really great places to view that are very close to the road. I mean, sometimes there are even places where you could just pull up and watch a waterfall and you don't even have to get out of your car. And I wanted people to know that those places exist and they could find them and still enjoy the beauty of nature without having to compromise their body in any way.
Yeah. And I feel like you can relate to some of this. We talked, of course, before today, and we had a really nice conversation. And you shared with me, as you kind of already did, that you discovered hiking really kind of as you approached the second half of life. And so this was sort of a new thing for you. Can you kind of walk us through this new discovery of the outdoors and hiking?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, I have to give credit to my parents because a very, very long time ago, they used to take my sister and me to all kinds of state parks and,
Mhm.
and really instilled a love of nature in me. Back when I was 27 years old, I had a pretty serious health scare. I was in a coma for 3 days with a collapsed lung,
Wow.
and the doctors were not sure if I was going to make it. As a matter of fact, when my parents arrived at the hospital, the doctors went over to them and said, She's in God's hands now."
Wow.
So it was a very scary time, but I was able to get through that. But when I got out of the hospital after an 8-day stay in the critical care unit, um, I was on very high doses of medication
Mhm.
that made me rapidly gain weight. There was really nothing I could do about it. I mean, I was on a very limited physical regimen after having this happen. I mean, my body really needed some time to recover from it. So there wasn't a whole lot of exercising or anything going on. I was basically able to walk on flat surfaces. So I would walk through my neighborhood, but that was about all I could do. And that in combination with being on this medicine and having previously been a high school and college athlete, it was very difficult for me to not exercise or do things. And it was also difficult for me to sit there and watch my body morphing into something that I had never seen before. These things happen, but then life continues on. I went on to get married and have a child, and just life happens. I didn't really focus on me during that time, which I think there are a lot of people who could relate to that. There are
Definitely.
many of us who, put ourselves on the back burner for life for various reasons. I did get to a point when I was 47. I said, you know what? Enough is enough. I had it. I needed to stop making excuses and start doing something. And I don't know what it was about that time that finally lit the fire under my feet, but I'm very glad it happened. I started walking, and then I started walking on trails because, again, it's what I was raised with.
Yeah.
But we always enjoyed it. And then I thought, you know what, I'm ready to do something more. So I started hiking some more challenging trails. But then COVID hit. There was no ability to go to a gym anymore for a little while.
Right.
So I just went back out into the woods. I hit trails and, went to places that weren't going to be heavily populated. And it just escalated from there.
You said enough is enough. Or I think when we were on the phone, you said, like, I just can't live like this anymore. And just now I heard you say I was tired of the excuses. Right. But I'm looking at somebody who, I mean, gosh, a coma for 3 days, like really facing like mortality. I mean, it seems like that's a legitimate fear. Like to face that down, I don't know that I'd call it an excuse, but I'm curious if you can kind of maybe bridge that gap, because that was a very real thing. And I think it's very natural that somebody would come out of that, with a fear for their own mortality and being careful and being safe, and this is what things like fear of heights protects us from,
Hmm.
right? But I'm just curious, like when you talk about this as being excuses, can you kind of help bridge the gap there?
Well, this happened when the health scare happened when I was 27.
Yeah,
I started seriously hiking when I was 47.
yeah,
So believe me, in that 20-year gap,
yeah,
there were a whole lot of baby steps taken.
gotcha.
So, and it started with me just walking out of my front door and down the street because in the beginning, that's all I was able to do. And then it progressed to walking to the end of the block and then walking through the neighborhood. And it was a very slow progression, because I was very cognizant of my health
Right.
and, still getting monthly check-ins with doctors and things like that. So I was very cautious.
Yeah,
So I think I did, there was 20 years in there. By the time we got to year 15, my body was healed. It was sufficiently healed at that point,
got it.
more than sufficiently healed. So I think it's more so from that point on that I felt like I was making excuses and just not doing it. Certainly in the beginning, no, I was walking on eggshells in the beginning,
Right.
and I didn't take any chances because, let's face it, it was a pretty close call, and I certainly didn't want that to happen again.
So I think when you say something like, I'm enough is enough, like no more excuses, like there's a moment in time where you say like, I'm living life this way and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to move to this new way. Like it sounds like you knew your body was recovered and ready to go, but your mind wasn't quite there yet. I'm just wondering if you can sort of take us across that threshold from like, enough is enough to like this new Michelle.
And quite honestly, I'm not sure if I can even pinpoint, you know, um, something that happened or any one specific thing.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, again, having been an athlete, I worked out a lot. I was very physically fit at one point. As you age and after you've had a child, and after having taken medication that put a lot of extra weight on me, I clearly did not look like what I did years ago. And nor do I expect to ever get back to what I looked like in my early to mid 20s. But I just knew I wasn't happy. I looked at myself in the mirror and I just wasn't happy. And at that point, the only person who can change that was me.
And you made a decision in those moments.
Yeah. When I set my mind to something, I am 100% all in.
I love it. Hey everyone, it's Scott here. Did you know that the members of my real estate team, W Realty Group, are listening to their own voices that call to adventure by setting big goals? Some of those goals include planning trips to Bali and the Kingdom of Bhutan, buying investment homes, and running the Chicago Marathon. At W Realty Group, we support and encourage these big goals and want to help turn them into reality. We're currently looking to add new members to the team. If you know a great real estate agent in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that would benefit from being part of our team, please send a text, an email, or give me a call. And know that when you support W Realty Group, you're also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening. Just to kind of tie this together, like the fear of heights sort of comes later. This new you is sort of like tied to this desire to get in shape, lose the weight, and hiking becomes this thing that allows you to pursue that goal. So, can you kind of talk us through, like, age 47, like what kind of hiking adventures you discovered, and what are some of the hikes that you've taken?
Well, initially I said I took walks in the woods
Mhm.
basically. The trails I was on were very easy trails, but that became a little boring for me. So then I went to the more moderate trails and then started hiking some more challenging trails. And in northeastern Pennsylvania and in the northeastern United States, there are some fairly challenging hikes, but nothing like being in the Rockies or being in Canada. I wanted more. I was researching these places and they looked so beautiful, and I said, you know what? I want to be at a level of stamina where I can do these things. Again, it was very visually driven at that point. I was, you're on the internet, you're looking at these places and you're seeing just how amazing and how gorgeous they are. And I said, you know what? I want to experience that. What do I need to do to be able to do that?
So what was the answer to that? What did you need to be able to do?
In my mind, I thought building up some cardio would not be a bad idea
Mhm,
because where I wanted to go in Colorado is certainly a much higher elevation than northeastern Pennsylvania.
mhm.
I felt like when I did go to the gym, I would set the treadmill incline to as steep as it could go and do
Nice.
some circuit training that way. Certainly did weight training along with that just to make sure I was strong enough to do these hikes. And I worked my core very extensively because I wanted to make sure I had good balance. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of trail to walk on some of these hikes, and the drop offs are rather steep. So you want to make sure you have good balance when you do these things.
Yeah, especially when you have a fear of heights. That
Hmm.
that's something.
Yeah.
So the progression is, hiking around, like, the woods in the local area where you're in northeastern Pennsylvania, but you eventually find your way to some of the big peaks in the Colorado area. Like, tell us
Yes.
about some of those experiences.
Oh goodness. Well, this past summer was the trip to Colorado. I made sure I was acclimated to the difference in elevation
Uh-huh.
before I did anything, because elevation sickness is a real thing, and
It is.
it can be very dangerous actually
Yeah.
if you're not careful. So you really need to make sure you're at that altitude for a significant amount of time before you start hiking it. I absolutely noticed the difference the higher and higher I went. I noticed the difference in my breathing. The first major peak that I conquered was Mount Bierstadt in
Okay.
Colorado. It was my first 14er. It was really interesting. It's a beautiful hike. When I started at the trailhead in the morning, in a very, very early morning hours, there were about 100 other people there with me in the parking lot, all gearing up, ready to go. It's July. We were all wearing winter coats.
Wow.
It was kind of a surreal experience, for the first time doing this. There were times along the trail where I was mumbling to myself, in some of the steeper sections saying, why? Why did I set this as my goal? I think it's around 8 miles round trip,
Okay.
but it was steep. 14ers are kind of like the gold standard when it comes to hiking. If you really, really want to challenge yourself, you try to do a 14er. I read up on which ones I should potentially tackle first. And I remember saying to myself as I was about three-quarters of the way up the mountain, like, whoever said this should be one of the first, they lied. They totally lied. But I pressed on. About the last third of a mile of that hike is a rock scramble,
Okay.
almost straight up. And at that point, I was very, very grateful that I had taken some time to overcome that fear of heights, because when you're on this rock scramble, you turn around and there's like nothing behind you.
Yeah.
If you fall from there, that could be devastating.
Yeah, so for listeners, rock scramble, like, you're not ropes or crampons or anything, but you are using your hands a little bit?
Yeah, it's not as steep as it's not a perfectly up and down,
Yep.
incline, but there's somewhat of an incline to it, but you're still climbing at a rather steep,
Hmm.
at a rather steep incline. And the rocks that I was climbing on were anywhere between 4 feet and 8 feet tall. You were able to pick and choose, and there were certainly enough of them there that you could find a safe way up to the top. But it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
So for you at 14,000 feet, like what was it like getting to that summit of that first 14er?
Oh my goodness. I had planned on sitting up there to eat lunch, and I'm
Okay.
really glad I did because the views were just unlike anything I had ever seen before. I mean, you could watch these things on YouTube and you could see pictures online, but there's really nothing like being there. It was just so spectacularly beautiful, and I do have a number of videos that show the view from up there.
Yeah.
But again, it's just not the same. I tried to recreate it as best I could for people, but it's just really exhilarating at the top of a mountain that high.
I completely understand that. It's just, when you're in those big mountains, it's like you just stand there truly in awe, is the word I love to use on this podcast. And it's just, you can't capture it in a picture. I wonder for listeners if you could attempt to describe what you saw that first time you got to the top of the 14er.
Okay. Well, I mean, in that part of Colorado, there are actually many 14ers.
Mhm.
So you get to see the tops of a lot of these other mountains while you're up there. On the day I was there, there were some clouds earlier in the day. So it's really neat to see that you go above the clouds.
Yeah.
That was kind of a fun part of the fun part of the trail is getting up above the clouds. And then then it really hit me like, wow, I am really this high up. Like, there's nothing here in Pennsylvania that even comes close
Yeah.
to getting to that height.
Yeah.
There just isn't. And then you're past the tree line at this point. A little aside here, one of the things you have to worry about when you climb these 14ers are afternoon storms
Mhm.
because they come very quickly in Colorado, and there's nowhere to hide or go. You are literally on the side of a mountain, no trees, no nothing. And I wasn't yet at the rock scramble, so there was if a storm rolled in quickly, there would have been no place to go. So that's always kind of in the back of your head. At
Yeah.
least it was for me,
Yeah.
saying, okay, you know what? I double and triple checked like 5 different weather reports to make sure that there wasn't going to be a storm today, but it's still kind of in the back of your head, like, where would I go? If there
Yeah.
was lightning, where would I go? Because right now I am the most conductive thing on this mountain.
That's right. That's right. So, how do you protect against that? Is it just watching the weather and that's it? I mean, is there anything else that people can do to prepare for that?
Not really, but there are very specialized weather reports in that part of the country for people who are specifically hiking.
Yeah.
Not just climbing 14ers, but those who go into slot canyons as well, because slot canyons flood very easily. You need to be really cognizant of the weather when you're inside of a slot canyon, because if you're in a little narrow area with huge walls on both sides of you and that starts to flood, you have nowhere to go.
That's right. Yeah.
So they have specialized weather reports out in those areas for hikers specifically.
Pay attention to the weather.
Yeah, it's not just watching your local ABC affiliate and saying,
Yeah.
okay, here they said it's okay, so I'm going to go.
So, I want to get into the part that I'm super excited about, and that is fear of heights. You don't climb a 14er with, you have to at least face that fear of heights at some point.
Hmm.
So, Michelle, can you kind of paint a picture? And I don't, my sense is that this whole adventure in hiking was not about your fear of heights, but this was something that you ended up having to face kind of along the way. Um, could you talk about what that fear of heights was like for you before?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty severe. I could not climb a 6 foot ladder. I was afraid I would be paralyzed and just stand at the bottom and say, no, I can't do this. And when you're hiking, there are drop offs. Even on some of the easier trails, there are drop offs. and I would be as far away from that. I'd be like clinging to the other side of the trail. But then there was one very specific event that happened. There's a wonderful state park near me called Ricketts Glen
Okay.
State Park. And if anybody likes waterfalls, you need to go to this park because there's a waterfall trail that has 22 waterfalls on it.
Cool.
Yeah, all
Ricketts
in one.
Glen?
Yes, Ricketts Glen State Park. It's
Okay.
amazing. Most of the waterfalls are very out in the open, but there's this one waterfall that you come to, and you can't see it unless you climb this like 12 to 15-foot rock ledge.
Mhm.
And I wanted to see that waterfall. I was determined to see that waterfall. Kind of sized up the situation and I looked at the rock that I had to climb and I said, okay, there are plenty of places to hang on, plenty of places for my feet. And I said, you know what? I have come to see all 22 of these waterfalls. I'm going to see this one. And I was terrified and my palms were sweating and I was afraid I was going to slip off those rocks, but I started climbing. And even though it was only 12 to 15 feet, I felt at that point like I had already conquered Mount Everest because
Nice.
when I reached that flat ledge, I just couldn't believe that I had done that. I was still shaking. I was physically shaking from doing this. But I took a selfie with that waterfall and definitely posted about that because that was one of the most meaningful hikes I've ever done. I just said, you know what, again, enough is enough. I cannot live life being afraid to get onto a 6-foot ladder. That's a ridiculous fear
Yeah.
in my mind now.
So you mentioned sweaty palms. You mentioned like after doing the 12 foot like climb up that rock ledge,
Mhm.
kind of shaking. Like what else showed up for you in your body, like with that fear of heights?
Oh my goodness! I mean, the heart palpitations. My heart was beating out of my chest. You're sweating. You're getting beads of sweat running down your forehead. I mean, for me, I had a lot of physical
Yeah.
reactions to this.
And so you said it was like the desire to see this waterfall that
Hmm.
allowed you to push through like that physical expression of this fear of heights.
I've grown to have such a love of nature, and
Mhm.
I just appreciate it so much. I just had the desire to see that waterfall outweighed my fear at that moment. And I said, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Took it one tiny little step at a time up those rocks.
I love it, but, I mean, to me, it seems like it was more than just seeing that waterfall, like, whether that was, like, something subconscious, but, like, there was something inside of you that said, like, "No, this fear is not gonna stop me today."
Oh yeah. Oh, believe me, I didn't realize that as I was climbing. As I was climbing this ledge, I said, my goal at that particular moment was to see that waterfall.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I climbed back down, which again, I was physically shaking even on the way down.
Yeah,
Um, it wasn't until I reached the parking lot that I just said, "Oh my gosh, I I just did that.
yeah,
Oh my, like this is awesome."
yeah.
you know. So it took a little while, but it did finally sink in. Like I can do this. I can face these fears and win. And then I started challenging myself even more.
Oh, okay. What did that look like?
Nothing as exciting as and as spectacular as that first time, but instead of being afraid of walking toward the edge
Mhm.
of a trail, now I was looking over the edge and I was, you know, being able to finally see, the stream or the river at the bottom of the trail that I was always too afraid to see. I wouldn't even get close enough to the edge of the trail to see that. So it opened my eyes to more things. As my mind expanded, the fears started dissipating.
Yeah, so was it a dissipation or was it like, did it go away immediately after that experience or did it take practice? Like, did it take time?
I would say it took maybe 2 or 3 times, to really not be afraid of such things. I mean, now I just walk over to the edge. There's no issue now. But after that first one, I still think I had some
Yeah.
trepidation and, was a little cautious. But then the logical side of my mind said, hey, you already did this and you were fine and you're going to be fine. So go take a look. It just, like I said, 2 or 3 times. But after that, then I didn't even have that trepidation anymore.
Yeah, I love it. Do you have any remnants of that fear of heights left? Like, do you feel like you've fully gotten over it?
It's funny you say that because last night I had an experience that will answer this question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always terrified and would never use those elevators that have the glass where you could see out into like hotel lobbies and things
Yes.
like that. Last night, I was on the third or fourth floor of a building and had to get into a glass elevator. And I walked right in.
Amazing.
I just walked right in.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that so much.
So I was up there 3 or 4 stories up. I never would have done that in the past.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. You're reminding me. My family and I, we were in Canada over the summer in Toronto, and we went up to the CN Tower. I'm not sure if you're familiar
Mhm.
with that, but like at the top they have a platform, and inside there's super thick glass, but you walk out on this glass and you
Mhm.
basically see straight down,
Yeah,
and
you're
it
like
is
leaning
so
forward. Yeah.
yeah, it's so freaky. I mean, it totally freaked me. Like you just, just to be standing there looking down, it's yeah, it definitely my fear of heights is still there for sure. But I mean, to your point, like, you step out there and you do it and it, slowly
Mhm.
starts to dissipate. Like wondering isn't going to help it, but actually taking the step and doing it does.
Yes. And I think, quite honestly, I might have a butterfly or 2 if I had to step out onto a platform like that, but
Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, I wouldn't have even gone to the observation deck.
Yeah.
I was just too frightened.
Yeah. So how about getting up on a 6-foot ladder?
Oh, no problem.
No problem.
No problem. I change my light bulbs all the time now.
That's amazing. I love that so much. So, Michelle, I mean, this journey for you, really, it started because you wanted to get in shape. You wanted to lose some weight, but it became about like getting over fears, getting over things that you didn't necessarily think that you could do, and this new passion that you found, which is just being in nature. How has all of this, like, how has this experience sort of changed you and like what it's done for you as a person?
Oh my goodness. I mean, my life is just so much more enriching at this point. It might sound corny, but colors are more vibrant when I'm out there hiking. I mean, there's just something about it that just makes life that much sweeter. Fears have gone. So now there was space for something else to come in. And I tried to let in all the positive things and not allow any negativity in there.
Man, I love that. When you got rid I'm just gonna repeat back because I just what I heard you say was, like, when the fear was gone or kind of pushed out of the way, you made space for all this, like, happy, joyful stuff to come into your life and take up more space.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I truly believe that's what happened.
So you're a high school science teacher, and one of
Yes.
the things that you mentioned when we talked the first time was the perception that your students had of people in their 40s and their 50s being able to do this.
Yes.
Share with our listeners what, because there was maybe some motivation in there too.
Well, many of us can remember our high school days. And I know I was guilty of this as well. But, high school students think your life is over once you get past 25. I mean, that's it. There's nothing left after that. After that, you just drive a minivan and have a white picket fence around your house and, go to work every day. And, so their perception was kind of, limited as it should be. They're not yet at that age.
Yeah.
Um, they will realize that they are still very capable of doing things in their 40s and 50s. That they're kids. So, yeah, they weren't. They weren't sold on the fact that I was able to do those things until I showed them some videos.
Yeah, so was that a little was there a little motivation in there, like, "I'm gonna show you, I can do this."
Maybe a tiny bit, maybe
Well,
just a little.
I mean, clearly you've been inspired by these new accomplishments and these things that you're kinda stepping up and taking bigger heights and now climbing 14ers. And along with that, it seems has come a desire to share these experiences with other people through your social media. And I'm just wondering if you could kind of like help tie this together and talk a little bit about that desire to share this experience with others.
At first, again, I didn't think anybody would really be interested, but after posting on my personal page and after, I mean, many friends said, you need to do something with this. You know, put this somewhere where more than just your friends here on Facebook could see this. That motivated me to do that. And then I thought, you know what, why not gear it toward, you know, people who have a little bit of seasoning behind them. In some areas, I think that 40, 50, 60-year-old group at times can be a little overlooked when it comes to maybe certain aspects of fitness marketing and things like that. I don't think there's enough of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond who do amazing things. There are a lot of people who are still in great shape at those ages. There was just a news segment that came out while I was still in Colorado, actually, about I believe it was a 92-year-old man who had just climbed Half Dome, which is an incredibly steep and difficult trail. But he was 92 and he
Yeah.
and he did it for his birthday. That's amazing. I hope I can do that when I'm 70, let alone 92. I mean, my goodness.
It's something for us all to aspire for. We had Alfredo Aliaga on our podcast not long ago. He's a 92-year-old that did the Grand Canyon rim to rim.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was just on here a couple of episodes ago. So yeah, it's amazing to see the things that are possible. And I think it's great that you are sharing what you love and helping to inspire other people to follow suit. Really, I mean, it's truly incredible. What's next for you? Do you have any big hikes on the horizon?
Next summer. Yes, I'm hoping to do Angel's Landing out in
Oh,
Zion National Park.
you're gonna have to test your fear of heights on that one.
Yes, I certainly will. But
But
that's exactly why I'm doing it.
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic. Michelle, when in our first conversation, you said, I can't live like this anymore. And you crossed this threshold and you went after these big goals and dreams. And now you've made space and now you've brought all this joy and fun and excitement in your life because you pushed the other stuff out. I'm curious for people listening that maybe have felt or are feeling some of those fearful feelings that you once felt. What advice do you have for those people on how to get started on this journey?
Yeah, baby steps. Don't ever force it if it's truly that uncomfortable for you, but baby steps. Find a way to just inch toward that goal, no matter what it is. I mean, and that's not just for a fear of heights, that's for anything. That's for any goal. Because any forward progress is still progress. It doesn't matter if it's a small amount, it's still progress. So do one thing. If you're afraid to get up on a ladder, stand on the ground and put one foot up on that first rung. And then put your foot down and say, you know what? I moved forward today. If I want to do more, great. But if I don't, I still moved forward. And I think you just need to take it piece by piece. Some people might be able to just jump in, with both feet and be successful. That approach would not necessarily have worked for me. Just one step at a time.
Thank you for that. Michelle, all of this is so inspiring. And I know that at some point, Hollywood's going to pick up on your story. And when they do, they're going to want to make a movie about this,
Mhm.
stepping out of your comfort zone, setting these big goals, getting over a fear of heights, climbing these 14ers. They're going to make a movie about you. And when they do, I want to know who's going to be the Hollywood actress that's going to play you in this movie.
truth be told, I had to ask friends about this one.
Yep.
They agreed on Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon. I love it. Okay, great. And what is your movie going to be called?
I'm still here.
Nice. This is good. I like this movie. I'm Still Here, starring Reese Witherspoon. I'm going to go see that movie for sure. She's one of my favorites. Michelle, tell us about your social media channels. How can people find out more about you and see some of your content?
Well, right now, the vast majority of my content is actually on TikTok. I love making videos on there.
Nice.
If people haven't used that yet, try it because the video editing is so much fun and
Nice.
there's so many options for you. But I am on TikTok at hiking after 50, not the word, just the number.
Okay.
So hiking after 50. And as we speak, my website is being built. So there will be a hikingafter50.com very soon. So that's going to have a blog and it will have travel tips and a whole bunch of information and inspirational stories.
Fantastic. Well, check out Hiking After 50 on TikTok and watch out for Michelle's website, which is coming. Michelle, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Michelle's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Michelle, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Scott. It's been a pleasure.